Basics of MapKit. So MapKit, what is it? MapKit's an Apple framework that allows you to easily integrate a map into any new or existing application, and it gives you a lot of different tools to help you put annotations on the map, edit, move, and basically manipulate a map. Um, Also allows you to map out directions from point A to point B, but that also requires core location, which we won't get into too much today. But just know that that's available if you need like directions for driving or walking or anything like that. MapKit allows you to, it provides you with that information. So MapKit, you've probably used Apple Maps before, or it looks kind of similar to Google Maps, but it basically allows you to map directions or also pinpointing annotations. So it allows you to put any kind of annotations that you want, even custom ones. So the ones that you see here are more of the standard annotations that they provide for you, but if you want to make some custom annotations, you can make cool looking ones like those and then pop-ups around those after you click on them. You can also draw on the map, so it allows you to create circles or polygons or rectangles or anything that you like. And you'll notice that those are custom annotations as well. It's just a pizza icon. But yeah, those are some of the basics of MapKit. But the way to use MapKit is you essentially have to import MapKit into your code base, and it basically provides all of the tools that you'll need to um, use for MapKit. So this comes with the map view delegate, which we'll go into more detail on that. So, well, I guess we'll go more into the map view first. So when you import MapKit, you'll also probably drag in map this map view from your storyboard into your code base. And this allows you to repaint the map, add annotations, and basically add whatever you want to the map. And you can reference it through this map view outlet. So a lot of things you can do here: zoom, adding annotations, adding polygons, getting current location. This one requires core location as well, and we won't get into that too much either. But um, when you repaint things on the map, these are graphical changes. So I don't know if you guys have run into any issues with asynchronous calls, but anything that you do with a map, you have to run on the main thread. But we'll go into that during the live example too.
Sorry, so is the map view, is it the UI component itself or?
Yep, the map view
Oh,
is a UI component itself that you actually see on the storyboard. So it actually makes it really easy. So you can actually pull in a map view from the toolbar into your storyboard wherever you want, and then you can create an outlet in your code. So map view methods. One of the first things that you'll notice is the map type. So this allows you to change between different kinds of map styles. So you have satellite views, standard views, and also hybrid views, which are your standard and satellite combined. But you also have these three different ones, so satellite flyover, hybrid flyover, and muted standard. Those aren't used as common as a standard satellite hybrid, but those are still available for you to use. Something else that's extremely important for if you ever want to do any gestures on your map is this convert CG point coordinate view. So this essentially allows you to pick up on a gesture, and based on the position of that tap point on the map, it converts it to an actual GPS coordinate that you can use. So this is extremely helpful for if you have any tap gestures and you want to drop an annotation where you tapped, you can get the specific GPS coordinate from that tap point on the map. Other methods that you have is like this one, set visible map rect. So this one essentially allows you to zoom to a certain map rect. So a map rect is basically a rectangle in 2D space that you specify. And if you pass this in, it'll zoom just so that that map rect fits within view of the map. So it makes it easier for like if you want to zoom to a shape that you make or something like that, you can just do set visible map rect and it'll zoom just to where that shape will fit in the map, which is kind of neat. Set region is for, say you just want to zoom to a certain distance at this coordinate. You pass in a coordinate region, which is essentially a coordinate, and then you pass in a degree also. So they give you latitude delta and also longitude delta, which are in degrees, and for each 1 degree, that's about 111 kilometers or 69 miles from the documentation. I didn't memorize that. But yep, just another way to zoom. So here we get into the map view delegate. So they provide you with a lot of optional methods, kind of like your table view or your collection view. There's a lot of delegate methods that you can utilize that sends back information. The map view delegate is no different. So two commonly used ones that you might use if you have MapKit is render for overlay and also view for annotation. So render for overlay is basically how you paint certain shapes on the map. So you might add a circle or a rectangle or some sort of polygon onto the map, but this is actually how you specify what kind of fill color you want, what kind of transparency you want if you have a fill on that shape, and also stroke color. So the big thing to keep in mind here is you have to have this implemented in order for shapes to show up. So if you add a circle or a rectangle to the map and you don't implement this function, you won't see anything on the map. It just won't render because it can't find something for like circle or rectangle to know how to render that thing on the map. The other thing that you can implement is view for annotation. So this essentially allows you to modify how an annotation looks. So say you want a custom Pokemon annotation on your map, you can use this to specify that kind of annotation. And if you just return nil, say something errors out, it'll just use the standard annotation view. So something good to keep in mind. Wow, that went really fast. All right, cool. So we are going to go into the live demonstration. Did you guys have any questions about map view and some of the methods that will be useful for you if you use it? Perfect. So if you guys remember last time, we jumped into using Codable and hitting the weather API and things like that. I figured I would build up on top of that to where we can use maps to show weather information. So I'm just going to go ahead, instead of using a single view app, I'm going to go into just a quick master detail app. So Coder map example. Create. Alright, so have you guys ever used a builder like this before, or have you mostly been using single app? Yeah. So when you bring something like this in, it provides you with a lot of things. So if I were to start this up right now, not that one. Apologies if this takes a little. Oh, maybe. Oh wow. Okay, cool. So you'll notice I just created a master detail view controller, and this is basically what it gives me. So when I start up, it has like a base example of how to get started with something like this. So remember, we went through master detail controllers before. This basically allows you, it gives you all of the infrastructure needed to start something like that up. So we're going to go through and pull these into our supporting files. Files. All right. Yeah. There we go. Supporting files. Okay. So that still works. All right, cool. Everything's still working. So in order to bring in the map, it's actually really, really simple. all you have to do is go into the storyboard and this iPad view real quick. And you'll notice this map kit view. So all you have to do is drag this into your storyboard. Make sure it aligns with, so this is going to take up the entirety of that detail view that we have set in place. We'll set our constraints. And after that, you can start up your application and you'll notice your map should pop up if everything goes well. Alright, perfect. So that is your map. All it took was dragging that map view into your view component, and you have a fully functional map. You can scroll, you can zoom in, everything like that. That's all built in and comes with MapKit. What we can do here is I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of that weather infrastructure that we had before. So you guys are pretty familiar with Codable now. I don't know if you guys want me to go over it again, but to save you guys time from me just typing out what we did before, I'm going to pull up this guy and pull this guy in. Oops. URL for weather. We'll put that in our detail view. Do you guys still remember what the best place to put your API calls are, like your URLs and everything? Or your API keys? Yep, that's exactly right. I'll go ahead and do that here as well. Transport security settings. Oops. Oh. All right. Pull this guy into. So this get weather information should be familiar with you guys, right? So data task, URL component. I had this JSON decoder weather, decoded the JSON data that I came back as weather. Get in this area because we need to import MapKit. Cool, that's expected. Self that map view. All right, so you guys remember how to bring in the map view, right? So your map view lives in your storyboard. All you need to do is drag in a reference to that detail view controller. Oops. So all you have to do is control drag to create a reference. So we'll just call this map view. And here's that MK map view that I was talking about earlier, where you're going to do most of your map things on. So adding annotations, zooming, any functions, they're going to be through this reference that you create from your storyboard. So also have to bring in that weather object. I know I'm going a little quick. If you guys have any questions, feel free to speak up or anything like that. Go ahead and create that weather object. So, have you guys done anything with gestures before? Tap gestures or long press gestures or anything like that?
Yeah. So they did. It was simply the storyboard gestures.
Okay.
Programmatic.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, I'll show you how to do them programmatically here because it'll be a little easier, especially with this map view, to just add a gesture for like long tap and touch gestures. So, let's-
So you have to add them for that.
yeah, you'll typically add them in the view did load, but it'll look something similar to this. So in our view did load, we're gonna create this long press gesture. So all it takes is, well, we don't have this function yet, but you pass in target, which is yourself, and then you pass in your selector. So your selector is a function that it calls when that gesture happens. Go ahead and do that. Gesture recognize which code is going to be. Alright, cool. There we go. So one of the biggest things to remember when you're creating your own gestures programmatically is to actually add them to whatever view that you want to put that gesture on. So we created this long press gesture recognizer, but we haven't actually put it on anything. So we'll just do that here. We want to add it to the map view, so we're going to do map view.add gesture recognizer, and we'll just pass in that long press gesture recognizer. And should be used now. And we'll go ahead and put a breakpoint here just to make sure that we're getting into this function when we hold down on the map. Alright. Hold down. That. Cool. So we got in here just fine, so everything is hooked up correctly. So now what we want to be able to do is be able to hold down on the map and actually add an annotation. So to do that, you'll have to do that conversion, right? So that convert touch point to GPS coordinate, essentially. So what we're going to do first is select coordinate equal to map view dot convert. So you'll have a lot of different conversion options, but the one that we're going to be looking for is CG points. So CG point will actually be coming from our sender. So on sender, you'll have a sender.location in view. So you'll just pass in the map view and then to coordinate from map view as well. Current coordinate. So if we go ahead and do that, put a breakpoint there. So hold down, you get this coordinate, but first we're going to take a look at what comes back from our sender. So sender.location view map view. We get x of 379, y of 334, and this is completely useless to us at first, but if we send it through the conversion, we'll notice that our coordinate, we actually get latitude and longitude degrees, which is useful for us. So with that, you'll notice that it also got called twice, which is kind of strange, right? So if you notice the console log over there, it gets printed twice. So the thing to keep in mind with press down. So it's registering you pressing down, holding, and then letting go. That registers as two different actions. So it's kind of annoying in some circumstances because sometimes you might just want one thing to happen. So a way to bypass that kind of annoyance is looking at the state. So on your sender, you have sender.state, and this returns you back a UI gesture recognizer state. So let's put when you can see all of the different states that the UI gesture handler can respond with. So began, canceled, changed, ended. So here we're just gonna use began. So if we wrap this guy in here, it should just be called once.
Choosing which state you use for that will change the behavior of your app, because you can click down, you can press on the screen and not let go. This will still fire.
Right.
But if you chose ended, it wouldn't fire until you let go.
Right, exactly.
So-
So depending on what you want to happen, like if you want an action to take place after you let go or immediately when a user taps down and long presses, you can choose accordingly as to which state you want to use.
Sorry, so the tap, like just a tap would be the same as the long press? Like there's two parts to it?
Right. Yep. Cool. So what do you guys think we should do on long tap? So we want to try to implement weather information, right? So what we're probably going to do is, if we look at the documentation for Open Weather, we'll notice that we have a get by city name, by city ID, and also this, which is what we're concerned with, so geographic coordinates. So you can pass in a latitude and longitude, and it'll spit you back the weather information for that coordinate. So in my get weather information, I've actually already done this. So JSON decoder, let's see, we'll be using this guy. So let's just go ahead and call this and see what happens. Coming up, this guy first. All right, cool. So must have clicked in the middle of the ocean, but we got temperature of negative 1.3, humidity 4. Wow, those are some really weird numbers. Let's try to play somewhere more.
Pretty sure it's not in Celsius.
Yeah, so according to the documentation, it looks like they actually return back unit of measure as kelvins. That's a really good question.
Because
So
it's neutral and everybody's gonna have to convert it.
yeah, so whether or not you're imperial or that's true. It's a really beautiful card. Nice. All right, we're gonna ignore that for now, but we did get some weather information for the coordinate that we specified.
So 6 Kelvin.
Is that 6 Kelvin though?
Okay.
Because
No,
it's
temperature.
6 e to the negative 310. So it's like 0 Kelvin
Yeah.
in the middle of it. That doesn't seem correct.
That's not true for you, maybe?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so.
That's not
Is it to the negative 310?
Hold on. No, hold on. It was going Celsius and Fahrenheit.
I think that's
Yeah.
what E2 negative is.
6 is 0.
That's interesting.
It's basically zero.
Yeah, this is
Basically
basically
zero.
0, right? Times 10 to the negative 310.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pressure is 45.
Very.
That's a little awkward. Okay.
Do we have our latitude and longitude
We do.
backwards by any chance?
Oh.
Are they backwards by any chance in the API file?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's flip those and see if we get better numbers. Map stuff. Alright.
You never know.
No, actually, because we send in coordinate.
Right.
But show that.
So I feel like sometimes different things like they don't take in the negative like there's like a negative.
Yeah,
I feel like one time I put in a coordinate and it freaked out and I took the sign out.
and it worked better.
Yeah.
Right point. Man, that does not make sense whatsoever. Okay,
That's the same numbers. we
that
got
is the same
before.
numbers.
Right.
Might be something wrong with the API. Alright, well, in any case, we can still
Let's
put an
pretend they're
annotation.
real.
Right, let's pretend that our weather API is coming back with correct information. So what we can do is we can create an annotation and drop it on the map. So we'll basically declare our annotation as an MK point annotation, and then we'll specify the coordinate, which will be the coordinate of where we tapped. So that's what we pass into get weather information. Yeah, let's see what this does. And just to keep in mind, unlike the table view where you have to reload data after you change your data set, when you add things to the map, it'll automatically start rendering things. So let's just make sure. So we click down, nothing actually happens. So if you guys remember from what I was telling you earlier, for the map view is a UI component, and when you do things to the map, you have to treat it like it's a UI component, which means that calls, if they're in an asynchronous call, they need to be run on the main thread. So if you ever see this where you've obviously added your annotation to the map, but nothing's showing up, this could potentially be an issue where you're not running that process on a main thread. So if that ever happens to you, do a dispatch main async. And you might see some better results. But it's one of those small things that are really hard to debug and you might not know where it's coming from. But keep in mind, UI components absolutely have to run on the main thread. And there it is. Well, I think we're getting correct information back. Oh, that's correct. So, okay, so, interesting. So,
No,
here,
that looks reasonable.
yeah, Spring City. So I made the title the JSON decoder weather.name, so it's the name of wherever that annotation was dropped, and also the subtitle is the temperature. So, and here with the API call, they tell you if you want it back in a certain unit, you can specify. So I specified imperial. So these that you see here, this is the subtitle, name, so that's 78 degrees, 81 degrees. St. Louis, Milstead is 88 degrees. Cool, so we have our super awesome annotations here. But say you wanted to communicate this information back to another controller. So say you want to communicate it back to a master view. So say we wanted to hold down, and whenever we popped up an annotation, we wanted to populate the map or this table view with something. How would I go about doing it? Pop quiz. Or more in-class exercise. So, you guys remember. Also, the thing to keep in mind when you bring in like a master detail controller that's pre-built for you, you'll have a lot of junk like this. So notice has an add button, has this insert new objects, also has this objects array, and these segue things that come pre-built with it, which is probably not what you need. So you can probably start getting rid of some of these things. This guy?
The Objective-C.
Objective-C. Yeah, so some deprecated function calls potentially will need this at Objective-C sign. You'll notice that when like you'll have an error with your project, and if you click to fix, it'll just say you need to add Objective-C to the beginning of that function, just because it's a deprecated function, typically.
It was there. That was also there with the gesture recognizer. When you select them.
Right. This guy right here. Long press gesture recognizer. Probably have to do a little research to find out what the actual one is now. Yeah.
I think it has something with that anyway. It has something to do with the hashtag setup there.
Oh, right.
And
This guy right here. Yeah.
It's basically instead of passing in, because I did this with my final project,
Yeah.
my Sudoku app, and it had something to do with being able to pass in the function name of where you wanted it to, of what you wanted it to trigger.
Right.
So I can't remember.
Let's see the exact error. Right. So
Not exposed to Objective-C.
there's still a lot of leftover code that I guess is still on Objective-C and isn't necessarily compatible with Swift, so you have to tag this as Objective-C in order for that older code in the framework to actually see it. I could be making that up. That's how I reason it.
I just say okay Xcode if I do that and it works, we're cool.
And we are cool. Yep. And we are cool. Alright. Back to the main issue though. How do I talk back to my master view controller that has that table view? That I need to do. I can probably keep this objects array. I'm just going to rename this, instead of any, it's going to be weather. We're going to be a little more specific.
Delegate,
I do.
and then you can use the delegate method in the detail to add it
Yep.
to your table.
That's exactly right. Man, you guys have learned so much. I'm so proud of you. Oh man. Alright, so protocol, delegate name, detail view controller, delegate. Let's be a class. And then here I'm just gonna say func add weather. I'll just pass in the weather. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do that right when we do this JSON decoder. Has no member delegate. We'll add that here. So weak var delegate is our detail view controller delegate. And should be happy now. Alright, cool. Now that I have added it here, how do I add it back to my master view controller? Good. Yep. So out here as an extension. Oh, not that. Holy crap! What is that? Extension. All right. Yeah. Sometimes autocomplete. You have to type a few more characters in before it knows. We'll just extend the detail view controller delegate, and it should provide us with this little guy. Alright, cool. So what do we want to do here? we just want to add it to our objects, right? So self.objects.append weather. Cool. And we also have to make sure that we set detail view controller's delegate to self. That should be hooked up good. Segue, we don't really care about a segue in this situation.
You have to reload this one because it's hidden.
Yep, exactly. Alright, so we'll make this object index path.row. We'll just make it the name. So return cell. Alright, that should work, right? Maybe. Alright, so if I hold down here, nothing reloaded. Let's make sure that we're hitting this. Oh, right. Forgot. Table view. Even though you reminded me. That is very important. All right. We get a purple error message. Must be used from main thread only. Do you guys remember what this is?
Asynchronous.
Right. So since table view.reload data is updating a UI component, that has to run on the main thread. So given that this is being called, so even though this function in particular isn't in an asynchronous call, we're calling this from an asynchronous function. So if you remember, we're calling this from our get weather information. So data task, this sets off an asynchronous call, and within our asynchronous call, we call this delegate back to the master. So technically, this is still an asynchronous call, which means table view.reload data is run on an asynchronous thread, which is why this is popping up with an error. So do you guys remember how to get past this error? Yep. Dispatch queue.main.async. And then we'll just plop this guy in here. And we're done. Hey man, get up. Nice. Alright. So now, Pawnee. Have you guys seen Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
Pawnee? It's a city that they are out of. But cool. We can go around, pop annotations, and fill in. Oh yeah, Clayton City. Yeah. In Florida. Oh. Oh yeah, it is Alabama. Yeah, you're right.
You
You
gotta
got
remember
your
Mississippi
geography
is
right.
up against the Mississippi, so that's
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yep. All right, cool. This is actually really bad. Do you know what I'm doing right now? So I don't think it's reloading more as it's adding more map views to. So every single one of these spawns a new map view.
Small problem.
Small problem. Because when we brought in this master detail view controller, it actually hooks up your segues too. So this is every one of these is segueing to a new map view controller. So we'll just go through since we're kind of
So if you click on that, yeah.
this guy. Yeah, this is what it creates for you.
But that
Which one?
That thing.
This guy.
Yeah.
That'll be your
View hierarchy.
view hierarchy. I don't know if it'll show you the different instances,
Oh, okay.
or does it?
Oh, maybe not.
But
I
your
guess it
memory
keeps-
should show you. Your memory usage should show you. You've got a whole lot of.
It's not too bad, I guess.
Well,
I
every
guess
time you weren't, is that trend of going up from when you
Me
were
clicking
adding
on?
more Matthews? Like
I'm
if you
actually
were to
kind of
click
curious.
it, if you
Right.
were
Oh no. What? Oh,
something.
something blew up. Never mind. So I wonder if it doesn't actually add new map views, but it's
That's
replacing the map view with a completely new map view. Because Apple won't do that. They won't allow you to create it. Never mind. Yeah, Apple's smart. So I was wrong. They don't actually add map views on top of each other. It just segues to a completely new map view, so the old one just gets replaced. But that's a good way to debug. The view hierarchy allows you to see all the views that are there. Man, that's so slow. Okay. So this is nice and all, but man, this is so slow. Okay. All right. So this is nice and all, but this title and subtitle is kind of hard to see, right? It could almost be nicer if there was an annotation here. Do you guys remember how we might do that? To the slides. Convert we used. So convert was when we were viewing the gesture recognizer to see convert that point to a GPS coordinate. So that's been used. We're good on that front. But let's hop on the board right now. View for annotation. So view for annotation allows us to modify and add custom annotation styles to existing ones. So that's exactly what we're going to use here. So let's kill this real quick. Go to our detail view controller, and we'll go ahead and bring in our map delegate. So extension, detail view controller. Ooh, this is not cooperating. MK map view delegate. All right, cool. So if we dive into the map view delegate real quick, we can see all these additional functions that we can implement. So you have things for like map view will start loading map view did fail loading map view will start rendering, just a lot of lifecycle methods. And what's nice here is that it actually tells you what version of iOS is supporting this. So if you're developing for just a really old iOS version, you can keep that in mind. Annotation view did change, did add cluster annotation, all those things. What we're going to do here is the annotation view. So view for annotation. View for annotation, this guy. So here we can start modifying our annotation when it's tapped on. So we'll go ahead and create an identifier. Equal to marker. MK marker annotation view. Then view equal to marker annotation view annotation. And we'll just pass in our annotation here, and then our identifier. And then view. So this that we saw on the map here, these are actually called callouts. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable that callout on our annotation view. So can show callout. We'll just set this to true. View dot right callout accessory view. We're just going to make this Oh, we actually need that.
Are they all callouts, the circles and the?
No, so the callout would specifically refer to this object right here. Yeah. Yeah, the speech bubble. Simulator, you can do it. Am I blocking the TV by the way? Okay. I'm always self-conscious. Just do it like this. Like, yeah.
It's thinking about it.
It's doing something. Alright, cool. Interesting. I think I'm missing one more component. Slow simulator means really difficult to debug. Well, not difficult, but very painful to debug. Because every single time you start it up, it's just so slow.
This is interesting.
I probably build at least 100 times a day, so this is really sucky.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Just don't upgrade extra. Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, just downgrade.
I said force that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I forgot something. That's why it's not working. What am I forgetting? Remember when a long time ago when we made table view controllers from scratch, we brought in a main view controller, added our table view into that view controller? You remember a very important step that
Data structure.
yes. Yes. Same goes with the map. So you bring in this map view, you have to make sure to hook up your delegate. Otherwise it has no idea about those functions. And it won't like yell at you, it'll just not work like that. There we go. So we have this nice little call out with a title and a subtitle. So title is just our name, and then our temperature is right there. You'll notice it also animates for you. So when you tap on it, it'll turn into a small circle. And if you make new ones, oops. Okay. Nice. So we have a neat little map application that shows you the weather. But say we want to zoom in on these when we create them. You can use a function. Do you guys remember what function allows you to do that? So we have this set visible map rex, or we have set region. So in this case, we're probably going to use set region just because we have a single coordinate, not a shape that we want to zoom into. So we'll take this here. So we return the view. We'll go ahead and create our, on the map view, we'll call set region with MK coordinate region. So if you're ever confused about like what object like this is, MK coordinate region, you can always create it outside of that function. So say you need to pass in a MK coordinate region, you can just create that here. And usually if you do that, you can see the initializers for it. So this takes in a center, which is a CL location coordinate 2D, and also a span. So if you guys remember from here, our span is given in delta latitude and longitude, which we can see from this. So coordinate span, the initializer for that is a latitude delta and a longitude delta in degrees. So we probably want to zoom in about maybe like 30 miles. So we'll do 0.5 for both of these values. I'll also set this to variable, and then we'll pass this in. Then we have CL location coordinate 2D, which is given in our annotation. So if we just put annotation dot coordinate, we'll have that value, and then we can set this to our region, and pass region into this guy. Then animated. So sometimes if you have performance issues, maybe animating it might not be the best option. So actually on our application, we had about 5,000 annotations that we had on the map. So animating into it was a nightmare and it crashed the app. So we just had to turn this off. But for this case, we don't have that many, so we're just going to put that guy in there and run the app. Now, whenever we tap on the map to create an annotation, it should zoom in to that annotation. In the computer. Or just shut off my computer sometimes.
Sometimes giving boots necessary.
Yeah. Alright, cool. So you noticed we can tap on this, creates an annotation, and also zooms us into it. Cool. So next thing we might want is maybe change the map type. So what's cool about that is that it changes immediately. So we'll just go ahead and add a button on our storyboard for map type. Do you guys remember what kind of buttons you can put up here? Bar button items, maybe? So anything that's in the nav bar, you have to bring it in as a bar button item, typically. So we'll call this hybrid map. And then we'll bring this button in. And we're just going to do a simple check on the name of the button. So utility controller. We'll bring in an outlet. So map type button, and then we'll bring in the action. So map type button press. Oh no. Button pressed. Okay. Action. Map type button pressed. Press. Alright, cool. So all we're going to do here is do a check on the name. So map type button dot title. That equals hybrid map. We'll go ahead and change the map type. So do you guys remember how to change the map type? It is in slide somewhere, yeah. It is. All right, cool. So you have this MK map type, and map type is on the map view. So all you have to do is that reference to the map view, just say map type, and you can set it equal to those different kinds. So we're pressing hybrid button, so we want to change it probably to standard, and then we'll also change the map type button dot title to standard map, and then we'll also write the alternate condition for if we want to change it to hybrid. I know this view is terribly painful, but there's like not a lot of real estate on these computers, so things are a little scrunched up. But type button dot title, go to hybrid map. All right, cool. I did not. Good point. Good catch. We want that to be hybrid. Yep. Hybrid map standard. Hopefully you guys don't run into this issue with your versions of Xcode, or maybe wait to upgrade until they fix. Never upgrade. um, it's just kind of strange because half of us have this issue and the other half don't. So you might get lucky and it might not interrupt for something. Oh, right. So.
Sorry, one of
You
our
okay?
staff members who do projects in CSC is just stopping these random software developers with like large beards and like thank yous and being like, "Hi, are you here for Coder Girl?" I should not have sent him as a substitute.
That's funny.
He's like, "This is so fun." We'll find something else to do.
Alright. Cool. So you'll notice it happens pretty much instantaneous. So that's how you change the map type. Let's see. Oh, also drawing things on the map. So say we wanted to draw maybe a radius around our annotation. Do you guys have an idea of where we might do that? It's in one of our delegate methods. That's to zoom into
Yeah.
yeah, good try there. But yeah, set visible map rect is mainly for zooming. So say you want to zoom into a certain object or thing that you've painted. I actually wrote it out, but I commented that. So you basically just need this. You can create an MK circle. I'm just going to do a radius. So these are actually, the unit of measure isn't like meters or anything, it's map points. So a lot of this is just playing around with like how big you want the circle to be. But if we do this, we're going to be missing something. But we'll watch it not work first, and then we'll go and fix it. Do you guys have an idea of why this might not work? Oh my gosh. No. Okay. Do you know why it might not work?
I was not paying 100% attention.
You didn't. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so what we expect from here is when we zoom into this annotation, we expect a circle to be drawn here. Well, you'll notice that there's no circle here, but we've clearly added it to the map view.
Is it one of those like you have to tell it to like show itself?
Like setting it visible or something like that. Similar. You're on the right track. If we refer to our slides, we have this delegate method, right? Render for overlay. So even though you clearly added this shape to the map, it has no way of knowing how to render it on the map. So we're going to go ahead and fill in this function. So func map view render, nope, render. Render for. This is the one that you want. There's, yeah. All right, cool. So
Separate, like the rendering and then just the adding.
why would you separate it?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me try to see if I can reason that.
I guess maybe if sometimes you don't want to see it, then you can like toggle it.
Right, there could be a but there is a way to hide the object here, with even if you have a render for it. That's a good question. I'm not sure of the inner workings, but let's see if I can find that out.
Maybe it's a matter of separating it from the main view, doing all the logic and adding data to it on one side, and then the render handles
Yeah.
UI side of it. So the UI is not waiting on logic.
Right, and also I guess from a coding perspective, having your like rendering logic in a different place makes it a little easier because you can potentially do this map view.add circle anywhere, and you might not want to do like, well, actually, color. Oh yeah, there's no rendering place. Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe the developers thought that it might be a little ugly to do like you're specifying the color, background color, alpha inside where you're actually adding the circle. So separating that out might have been a better choice. That's a good question. I'll try to find out for you if I can see it. But we'll go ahead and guard on this. So the thing to keep in mind is that this render could potentially handle the rendering for a lot of different shapes and objects. So say you have circles, rectangles, different polygons, this renderer would handle everything. But since we only have one thing in here, we'll just do circle overlay equal to overlay as MK circle. Let's return MK overlay render. So since we only have one thing in here right now, we'll basically just return if the overlay that we send it doesn't cast to an MK circle. So circle render, okay, to MK circle render, circle overlay, and here we can actually start specifying the different things that we want to do on it. So We can do stroke color. Circle, render, stroke color. Maybe we want to make it blue. Circle, render, dot, fill color. Maybe we want to make this blue too. Then we can also specify an alpha. So circle, render has an alpha component, which is that. Maybe we'll make it 0.5 to make it a little transparent. And then we'll return this render. Ah, that was a lot faster. Surprising. I'm suspicious. Probably. Alright, so if we do this now, we have a tiny little circle here. But rendered correctly, we have a stroke color of blue, we have a fill color of blue, and also we have an opacity of 0.2. And from here, you can add a bunch of different shapes. So if you wanted a polygon, you can add a polygon, or if you wanted a CG map rect, you could do a CG map rect. Yes, those are some of the small things that I wanted to show you guys today. I was going to show you a real-life example of something that I've been working on, if you guys want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to end the video here, unless you guys had any more questions that wanted to be incorporated into the video. Good? Alright, cool. Let's look at my projects, if I can remember how to stop this. Stop recording.